Hey everyone, this is Mo from Smart Training 365. Welcome to the channel. In a world of endless fitness related information, especially on social media, it can be overwhelming to separate valuable knowledge or content created just for clicks. This is particularly challenging for beginners and even intermediate who may not have the tools to critically evaluate the information they come across. One of the biggest game changers for me personally was learning the 16 biomechanical factors, which clarified the difference between valuable and inaccurate information. Over time, I've discovered incredible resources and experts online that inspire me, and today I'm privileged to have one of them as a guest to talk about Myo-Reps, training strategies for hypertrophy, strength, longevity, sports performance, and much more. Børge, great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
The honor is mine too. Many of the people we have in our community are applying Myo-Reps in their training with the BRIG20, and today's video is BRIG20 and Myo-Reps. If you don't mind, can you tell us a bit about yourself for those who don't know you and how you end up discovering Myo-Reps? I'm sure nobody asked you this question before. And I like the name Myo-Reps. Like, what does it stand for?
Yeah, I can start with the last question. So myo is just a Latin word for muscle. And back when I invented Myo-Reps, I'm going to claim to invent it, even though it's a variation of rest pause training. I started a sports supplements company called Myo-Revolution, which later became My Revolution. So it was during that time I was kind of on the whole Myo wave. So I guess that's why I created or I used that a word in the method. As for myself, well, short story, I guess. I was a tiny kid. I wasn't very talented in any sport. I was underweight. I had allergies and bronchitis and all kinds of trouble. So being good at sports or building muscle was always a struggle for me. But I learned to read when I was around 4 years old. Uh, I knew math, like advanced math, from my dad's high school books when I was just like 7 years old. So just using my brain, understanding information, synthesizing that into understandable practical concepts was kind of my way to achieve some resemblance of greatness. And what I discovered was that whenever I came across something that worked really well for me, it would work 10 times better for people I share it with, which, obviously could have ruined my self-confidence, but being a coach was very gratifying. I really enjoyed that, seeing that others could win and improve and get better from something I shared was uh, sometimes better than actually winning myself. Not that I actually won anything, but at least my athletes and bodybuilders and fitness clients won a lot. So from an engineering
Many people too.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I just started sharing my content online back in 99, 2000, which was when the internet was very new. We had these discussion boards, and I would just read and try to understand everything and share my understandings of things. I was an avid participant of the HST forum, Brian Haycock's hypertrophy specific training. I used the online name Blade, and later started posting online at McDonald's forum and got some respect and admiration there. Writing articles, and people started contacting me for advice. That was in 2000 when I finished engineering school. And that was when I got my first paying client. So in just a few days, it's going to be my 25 year anniversary for Yeah. So, well, actually, it's been 30 years. I misspoke. Yeah, because that was, yeah, I'm trying to count the years here, but you know, it's been like 3 decades of coaching when I last counted. So 95 was my first paying client.
To me, I like Myo-Reps. I use them in my training. And I know many of our members who use the BRIG20 exercises also use Myo-Reps. It's effective. I even added the section in my book, Beyond Sets and Reps, about Myo-Reps. That's how much I believe in this strategy. Just because the video is called Myo-Reps and BRIG20, for those who don't know about the BRIG20, before we also dive into the questions, I want to give an overview. So the BRIG20 are 20 exercises that comply with 16 biomechanical factors that determine exercise efficiency. So we have a way to evaluate the efficiency of an exercise. So if an exercise meets these 16 factors, we consider it number one for that particular muscle. So if an exercise meets less than those 16 factors, can be considered number 2, 3, 4, depending on how many factors it depends. And the more factors an exercise comply with, the more efficient it is, and the less factors, the less efficient in terms of muscle loading. It does not mean that exercises that don't meet all 16 factors have no place in any training program. This is something that many people thought it was the BRIG20 or nothing. That's not true. And in this video, I will clarify that for those who maybe didn't know the message. So this is why we consider the BRIG20 efficient exercises. And by combining these exercises with Myo-Reps, so you said you get 70% faster results with Myo-Reps as compared to using the conventional way, like 2-3 sets, right? So I wonder, like, how much you can get when you combine Myo-Reps with BRIG20 exercises. Maybe 80%. I don't know. Do you use BRIG20 exercises?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I took the course back when you and Doug published that, and Myo-Reps. Excuse me.
The course was called, I think, True Bodybuilding. That you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we even emailed some back and forth back then. So I asked you some questions and stuff, and Doug as well. I have to correct something because you said you build muscle 70% faster. It's actually you spend 70% less time in the gym. Because one Myo-Rep set on average requires 1 minute 30 seconds, around there, maybe 2 minutes, and that's equivalent to 3 to 5 normal sets, depending on how many minute sets you do. And 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 sets will require you around 7 to 10 minutes. So 1.5 to 2 minutes versus 7 to 10 minutes, which is why it's 70% less time for the same stimulus. But Myo-Reps, due to their nature, you know, it's one set close to failure. A very essential part of Myo-Reps is managing fatigue instead of chasing it, instead of going to failure, because that will limit the volume you achieve in a set, and it may also limit your ability to activate motor units. So there's kind of a breaking point. If you start one rep from failure, I consider that to be the optimal, whereas that final rep can induce so much fatigue that it affects your performance in the mini sets and also later in the workout. And having just a short period of rest where you put down the weight, try to catch your breath, and recharge some ATP so that you can continue doing more reps.
Like 4 or 5 seconds?
I tend to say that you should take 2 to 5 deep breaths, up to 10 deep breaths. So in practical terms, that's between 5 to 30 seconds of rest, depending on how demanding the exercise is and how heavy the load is. And that obviously means that trying to do this on deadlifts and squats becomes more of a cardiovascular exercise and not a muscle building exercise. So it's actually perfect for the BRIG20.
To me, I like the efficiency because our message also is about efficient training, meaning like
Yeah,
get the most with the least. And we're not saying to be lazy because
of course
sometimes
not.
people think that, oh, so the BRIG20 is to, you do a little bit. That's not true. You still need to put the effort and dedication, and
Mm.
feel the fatigue. The only thing is you're not going to feel your joint suffering after the workout. You're going to feel a different kind of stimulation, which is perfect for recovery as well, or for people who have joint problems. Of course, if someone is injured, sometimes a good exercise might not even be beneficial. She should do like a different exercise that might rate a 5 or a 6 on a scale of the BRIG20 or 16 factors. So
Mm.
it's all about personalization, and each person should do what works best for them, assuming that they understand their level and the different factors. So, what resistance should be used for hypertrophy versus strength?
Well, I'm not sure you can completely separate those. I mean, a bigger muscle is going to be a stronger muscle, but generally you can say to reduce hypertrophy and emphasize strength, you're going to do low reps, lower volumes, higher loads, but have more reps in reserve. So less effort in terms of proximity to failure. And that's perfectly what you said as well. It's not easy, it's not simple because it's still high effort. And I like to use like an overarching framework of my philosophy, return on effort. So in life in general, whatever you apply in terms of time and effort should have a return, and at some point, the more effort you apply and the more time you spend on it, you just go into the diminishing returns part of the curve. So things just start to flatten out. And it also aligns really well with the Pareto principle, the 20-80 principle. So I would say if you go really light in loads, you'll just have a lot of discomfort and pain and burning, and you don't necessarily build more muscle from that, simply because it becomes so uncomfortable that it's difficult to push to the proximity to failure that's needed to maximize muscle building. So I would say the sweet spot for, at least when it comes to Myo-Reps, is between 8 and 15 reps, maybe up to 20 reps on some exercises, and should be fine. If it's like unilateral work and like a single joint exercise. 8 reps, this is when we start crossing over into, I would say 5 to 8 reps if you're not doing Myo-Reps would be the best place to spend time on just single or multiple sets with a long rest period in between. But at that point, you're also going to get more strength-specific adaptations simply because you are lifting loads closer to your 1 rep max, especially if we define strength as the ability to lift a 1 rep max load. But most will define strength as just an ability to lift a heavy load a sufficient number of times or repetitions. So it kind of depends on the definition.
Right. The reason I asked this question, because some people, when they want to, let's say, especially athletes, they want to get stronger, but they don't want necessarily to build like size.
Mm.
If they do Myo-Reps, let's say, and I believe, like we will talk about it later, but I believe they have a big place in sport-specific training. But just to clarify that they can achieve strength without getting big, just by knowing how to use the intensity and the weight. Do you agree with that, or you see it differently?
Yeah, for sure. If you're going to do Myo-Reps in the prescribed loading ranges and use the proximity to failure, like managing fatigue, so you stay at the point where you have high muscle fiber recruitment, it's kind of hard to avoid building muscle. But if that's important to you, I would just have more reps in reserve. At that point, it becomes more similar to cluster training. So you would do, for example, sets of 5 with short rest periods. At the load, you could lift 10 to 15 times. So now we're, at a proximity to failure, like we're so far from failure that we can get spikes of muscle fiber activation and power production, but we're not on the force velocity curve where the rep speed slows down due to fatigue or loading, where mechanical tension is maximized. So I would say that's a good way to get stronger and reduce the muscle building effect. Simply do, short rest training. So essentially Myo-Rep training, but at loads that, doing 3 to 5 reps is very easy for you, but you can lift it really explosively. For endurance, I would just lighten the loads, and now we go more into the strength endurance continuum. So doing sets of 20 to 30 reps with really short rest periods and say 5-rep mini sets, that would definitely just build a lot of metabolic metabolites and make it burn and hurt. And, you will get some muscle building from that as well, but it's not going to be like the sweet spot for muscle growth. So it's going to be tuned more towards strength endurance for sure.
How often should one train with these principles if their goal is hypertrophy?
That is highly individual. So it depends on how quickly you recover. And how quickly you recover depends on your muscle fiber distribution. That can be muscle specific, but it's also, highly individual. Some are more fast twitch, explosive, and these muscles can grow more, but they also recover slower. They also don't tolerate a lot of volume. So I tend to just tell people whatever you can recover from. So if you start low, I always encourage that we start with just like a single set and try to determine when are you the strongest after that single set. So it's a systematic process where you over time play around with the volume and the frequency and see when do you see the most progressive overload. The ability to add reps or load or both is when you are the most recovered, and that's also when you are the most able to stimulate muscle growth again. Because if you're constantly fatigued when you go into the gym and try to stimulate muscle growth, you're not going to be able to reach the highest threshold muscle fibers. So if you just keep doing that and accumulate fatigue over time, that's going to limit not only recovery, but also muscle growth. But I would say it's certainly possible to do like a single Myo-Rep set on some muscle groups for some people every other day. That's possible, but it's rare that you can do that for weeks or months on end. So also since that's equivalent to 3 to 5 sets, and doing 5 traditional sets 3 times per week for 15 sets per week can be difficult to recover from for many people.
Yeah, so it depends on the person's ability to recover, and it's all. I'm asking you these questions because they were sent to me, and we will talk about the importance of how you should personalize your program, and there's no one program that fits all. I'm just like going through the questions now to make sure
awesome.
that we cover them.
It's a very common question, and which is why there's like no. I can't just give an answer. The same way, my favorite analogy for this is getting a suntan. So it's like asking, how much sun do I need to expose my skin to get a suntan? And my answer would obviously be, depends on the intensity of the sun, how used your skin is to the sun. Are you at the North Pole or in Africa? Is it the daytime or the morning or the evening? So all of these things play a role. Whereas with training, it seems as if we're just chasing that perfect combination of sets and reps from some study or some expert or influencer. But my approach is to try to teach the principles so that you on an individual level can figure out systematically where your sweet spot is in terms of volume and frequency. And that may also vary depending on the muscle group and the chosen exercises.
We're trying to educate people to learn more about themselves and basically keep them aware of the factors that they should consider to create the right program for them. We're teaching them how to fish.
Yeah, exactly.
How does exercise selection matter?
Oh, it matters a lot. I mean, are you loading the muscle? Is the highest resistance at the end range of motion or the most contracted range of motion? Because, as the most recent research has shown that there might be benefits for some muscle groups training at longer muscle lengths, but that's also where you have the most muscle damage or potential for muscle damage. So that can demand more recovery. So it's like you win some, you lose some there. If you're using compound lifts, you distribute the load over many different muscle groups. But if you do like single joint isolation, you are focusing on a single muscle group. And some muscle groups are more easy to damage than others. Some muscles are harder to recruit than others. So the activation levels and thus the muscle damage will differ. So many variables needs to be taken into account. Although there is a range, so people get sometimes a little overwhelmed with all the variables they need to take into account, but it's not like this one exercise will allow you to train 5 sets 3 times per week, but switching an exercise will only allow 1 set once per week. It's still going to be within a certain range. So it's yeah, like you said, just an individual systematic process of figuring out how different exercises affect your ability to recover and progress.
To me personally, just an idea for those who are interested, like I use Myo-Reps for the muscles that I feel they need more attention, more time. So that's the one that I use Myo-Reps consistently. The other ones, I just do the regular stuff. Still doing BRIG20 exercises, but because I play tennis and pickleball, I do have additional exercises that still complied with the 16 factors, but they are not rated number 1 or 2 as a BRIG20. And we will talk about this a little bit more, because sometimes people, I see, hey Mo, this is not what Doug is teaching. You're completely going out. And that's the reason, because they didn't take the time to understand the 16 factors, which I honestly, not trying to push them, but like once someone reads them, it will make sense. It will see, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Who benefits the most from Myo-Reps?
Well, if nothing else, I mean, for injury rehab, for older people, sometimes I would even say for beginners, because it kind of circumvents the problem, which is that most tend to stop before they're even close to hitting failure. So what Myo-Reps does is that even though you're stopping 4 to 5 reps from failure, with the short rests and then you start again, you will, due to accumulation of fatigue, get closer to the point of failure where muscle activation levels increase, and you also increase the mechanical tension due to the force velocity relationship. So in studies where they have compared rest pause training, and you can see that they're either managing fatigue or going to failure on the mini sets, because I believe Myo-Reps is better simply because it manages instead of encourages fatigue. But in those studies, where they have, where they're using populations that are inherently not getting sufficiently close to failure from the traditional training, then the rest pause training or Myo-Reps really shine. It's much better. They get better strength gains and muscle gains from that. At worst, I would say most studies comparing rest pause training to traditional training, such as the study that has yet to be published from University of Tampa in Florida. They were using quite advanced lifters, so these guys are used to pushing really with high effort and close to failure. But with those study subjects, advanced, able to reach a necessary fatigue and close proximity to failure, Myo-Reps and traditional training was the same. So at worst, it's the same, but for some, especially those that are, for various reasons, unable to push sufficiently close to failure, it's much better, I would say. And the way you can determine this is that if you're able to do, let's say, a Myo-Rep set of 10 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, and you're still fine, then that's probably, for you and for that exercise and or muscle group, it's probably a good idea to use Myo-Reps simply because you need volume, you need effort. But if you consistently see like 10 plus 4 plus 1, just a sharp drop off in performance, you probably shouldn't be doing Myo-Reps at all. You're probably pushing with such an effort and with a proximity to failure where you should limit the total volume and have longer rest periods before you go again.
These are great tips for people to try, and it's really, this is the benefit, I believe, from videos like this, is to enlighten people so they can try and see what works best for them. At least they are getting it from the creator of Myo-Reps, so they understand like what to do and how to try it, and
Yeah, I agree.
in sports performance, when I do programs, beside using exercises that are sport specific, I consider the foundation is the BRIG20, and here is why. When you work each muscle in its ideal environment and you give attention to all the muscle of the body, you're going to strengthen and prepare those muscles to work together doing different tasks, and you will get the benefit from those muscles contributing. Versus, for example, I'll give you an example. If you're doing leg extension to work the quads, you're gonna get more optimal loading as compared to using the squat, because the quads will contribute to a degree, but there are different levers that will also be loaded and taken from that load, like the erector spinae and the glutes. And the erector spinae will be the limiting factors because its resistance, its strength is inferior to the glutes and the quads. So it does not mean that I will not use the squat. It means that I will do isolation exercises to build the foundation so that you can squat better, or you squat a certain way, or do lunges a certain way, use your body in different position and recruit the muscles. So that's, to me, I've been doing it also for myself. I didn't get injured. I've been playing pickleball and tennis every day beside my strength training. And I have to also be honest, I don't do a lot of sport-specific exercises. So these exercises already I'm getting benefit from. So that's what I consider foundational. What do you consider foundational in training?
Yeah, for sports, I tend to agree. I think some are placing too much emphasis on using exercises that are similar to the sport. And to me, that can actually interfere with motor patterns and learning. So for instance, boxing with dumbbells or doing a dumbbell press may not be the best exercise for a boxer. So I agree with your advice there to focus on training the muscle, get the muscle stronger and bigger, and then transfer to sport by doing the sport. Other than that, what you need to focus on depends on where are your weaknesses and what does your sport demand. So when I work with athletes, and I've been working with everything from snowboarders to endurance runners to soccer players to, just all different kinds of sports, and they all have different demands. Some need more endurance, some need more power. Even in soccer, are you a keeper, in the goalkeeper, or are you a defender, or on the midfield, or an attacker? All of these have different qualities. So what you need to train and focus on depends on your position, the demands of the sport, and get your strength stronger, but try to eliminate whatever weak chains are in weak links are in the chain.
Weak link in the chain. Yes, perfect. Yeah. Out of curiosity, did you work with tennis players?
Yes, I did.
What was the work consisted of?
Just like general strength training. I mean, we just got these guys really strong. I did use, traditional bench pressing and chin-ups and, some of these quite normal strength exercises. We also did some external and internal rotation work simply because there are a lot of demands on the tendons and tissues when playing tennis. Just general strength, get strong in the gym, transfer it on the court. So nothing really stands out, I would say. Also did some stability training simply because they have rapid force deceleration demands. So some eccentrics as well, isometrics and eccentrics are great to strengthen the tendons.
That's what I do also for sports programming, especially also for tennis. And in the BRIG20, we have the internal and external rotation exercises, the scapular retraction, the lat pull-in. All these are stabilizers and work perfectly for the shoulder, especially for someone who's going to serve. This is why, like I said, doing the BRIG20, honestly, I feel that there's not much need for crazy exercises because you will feel stronger. You can focus on just your sport, do those the things that you lack, do more serve. Like before, maybe if your serve wasn't working well, now you have this strength that you can use to do more serves, and that's how you're going to improve, with your sports. And not only that, I noticed when you strengthen all the muscles and you going to gain strength, and that strength, it doesn't only translate to doing more, it's mentally you feel stronger because now you feel your body responds more to what you have in terms of your knowledge to the game. Therefore, like if you want to do something, your body will respond better and you will be able to try more stuff, which will lead to better performance. So strength training is very important. Foundational training is very important for sport specific. The idea of like doing strength training will basically make you tense or it will get you injured. It's actually the opposite of that.
Yeah, definitely the opposite. That's a myth.
But the exercise quality has to be also well selected to suit the athlete's needs and level.
That's probably why the myth arose, because people used to be training with very ballistic training. They used like compound lifts, squats and benches, even though they maybe not didn't have the biomechanics for it. And so they got injured in the gym, and that limited their time on the field or in that respective sport. But that doesn't mean that strengthening or building the muscle is a bad idea. Quite the opposite.
It's true, yeah. And we did the seminar in New York with power lifters, and most of them, they are familiar with the BRIG20 and they use the BRIG20, and they noticed a lot of benefits, especially from like the lower back, the erector spinae, uh, contributing more to better posture during squats and deadlifts, and allowed them to go more for heavier weights. So it can be very beneficial for foundation and working with other sports.
Definitely.
One more question about athletes. You know, when I took a course about tennis and strength and conditioning, and this is not only in tennis, it can be in many other sports. So sometimes you find in season a program that goes like this. Day one, they have hypertrophy approach exercises. Day two, more explosivity exercises. Day three, it's more like explosivity and variation. So in the this is they do it in 1 week. Athletes, recovery is very important. Okay. And to me, spending more time on the court is important. But let's say if they are off season and they do this, if they lack, for example, in a certain strength in certain muscle, maybe they can focus on it more and do separately. But during the season, doing like a day like this, day this way, day strength, you know, I think it could be done in the same session. Meaning like you can, with Myo-Reps, you can do a set, for example, for hypertrophy, and then you can take the same exercise and do it for strength, and then you can do also for explosivity. And then you covered all aspects in the same session, and you move on and you do something else. You know, you can do it again the next day, but for different maybe muscle, because it's not going to change completely like that when you're on court. Oh, because I did this, so I cannot do, you know, certain movements. So what do you think of covering all aspects in the same session for athletes who are during the season training?
Well, if it's in season, I tend to not spend a lot of time in the gym, so I would definitely try to train more qualities in a single session. There's also something called the interference effect, which you've probably heard of, where on one side of the spectrum you have power training, and on the other side you have endurance training. So you shouldn't try to mix too much in the same session. Conflicting goals, yeah. But also I try to not do a lot of hypertrophy specific training in season. I believe we should be building the muscle off season and just transitioning or transferring that into sports performance in season. So I would probably just do some explosive work and some low volume strength work, maybe maintenance basically. So maybe twice a week. You could obviously also throw in some specific Myo-Rep training here and there on, you know, muscle groups that you're not necessarily, because it will impact recovery. It can for sure. So if you're competing the next day, then, you know, you wouldn't be doing that on leg extensions for a soccer player, for instance. So you just have to be careful with what muscle groups you are training in those sessions and how far from whatever event or sport specific workout you're doing.
Yeah, especially tennis, because you're not playing one match a week. Sometimes you play every day.
Yeah.
So it's important to know when and how to schedule your strength training. The schedule changes a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And just managing fatigue. I mean, just monitor your performance. That's your best indicator. I just completely, I think the idea of this dual factor model where you're supposed to overreach, strategically overtrain and then deload or unload in order to realize a performance increase because the fatigue is masking fitness, that just makes no sense to me. That's like getting a sunburn and then spending time indoors to get the suntan. So you need to tailor, you need to be seeing constant improvements in my perspective.
I agree. Yeah. Muscle imbalance is something that causes a lot of injuries, not only in sports specific, but in general. And the reason why the BRIG20 can be beneficial for muscle imbalance because you give attention to each muscle individually, which helps eliminate muscle imbalances. Can Myo-Reps help with muscle imbalance?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, if a muscle group is weaker than it should be, you prioritize it by doing it first, and you do whatever you can to increase motor unit recruitment. Because sometimes it's just your ability to actually train all of the muscle fibers in the muscle that is preventing you from getting the most out of it. So yeah, I think Myo-Reps is perfect for that, but do it first in a workout.
So let's say if you have, if you're doing chest and back and traps, and your traps are the weakest, so you should start with the traps first.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about program personalization, which basically was the purpose of writing the book, because I always get like, hey Mo, is the build and burn, like can I follow this and do this? And it's so hard. We can create a program that is the closest to do as is, but you need to be aware of many factors so you understand like how to use that information and the exercises in the way that works for you the best. We all have different genetics, lifestyle, stress level, how we manage stress, what we eat, age, genetics. All these things, like it's impossible to have them the same and then use the same program and get the same results. Program personalization is extremely important. For instance, as people reach their 40s and 50s and beyond, the area where strength declines can vary widely. Some might experience weakness in their wrist, other in their neck, quads, glutes. This makes personalized programs especially important as they account for these differences to ensure safe and effective progress. What are your thoughts on the value of personalized programs? Do you think working with a coach when possible offers significant advantages over following a generic program?
Yeah, I believe it's the make or break of training. I mean, if you're a beginner, you can probably just follow in a generic program, but after only a few months of training, you're going to reach a point where muscle building is slower and you're getting closer to your genetic and hormonal ceiling. And this is where technique and exercise selection begins to play a bigger role. And sometimes, I've had clients that have been training for 15 years and they can still be considered beginners on some levels because they just haven't figured out their, best frequency and volume combination. So some are just jumping randomly from one program to the next without understanding physiological principles or programming. And I believe that's where the key lies, individualization. I think that applies to any area of life. There are no generic principles that will work for everyone always. So you're definitely losing out if you're just thinking you can find a program online and follow that and you're going to be good.
Right. Sometimes factors like stress, motivation, problems in life and stuff can impact even though you're doing an efficient program with the best exercises. Because I've seen people like still work out and do the right thing, but they are not managing their mental health, like they are not balanced. how much the mental part of it plays in terms of results?
I'm going to go as far as say as it plays 100% of the role. Simply because if the sum of stressors is not just life and environment stressors or the training stress, but it's your perception of it and how you manage and handle yourself and the world around you. And I wholeheartedly believe in the mind-body connection, that you can actually think yourself sick, you can think yourself strong and resilient. And a big limitation in many of the people I work with is that they spend so much time worrying and fearing and ruminating that, being so concerned about the foods they're eating or perfecting the exercise selection or reps or sets or whatever training variable, that stress in and of itself is more damaging to their training results than the advantage of that food or set and rep combination could ever provide them with. So it's stress and managing your expectations, I guess, and being attached to outcomes all the time, and fearing the future and being resentful of the past is just one of the main things I work with my one-on-one clients, is how to understand the levels of thinking, the content, the strategy, and the fact that you are thinking. And understanding that will calm down the nervous system and allow you to recover better from whatever stress you are exposing yourself to, either willingly or unwillingly.
How do you know this? Like, did you discover it yourself? Did you go through, because we all have different levels of motivation. Sometimes, even though you know everything that you need to do to get the right results, sometimes mentally the motivation is different. For example, for me, the motivation when I was 20, 30 years old is different as compared to now. My motivation now is to be healthy, stay active, and I want to be a model for my daughter to see that I'm doing things the right way, so she can follow. So that's the difference. But before, like I wanted to impress, I wanted to look good in, the T-shirt, and so how do you deal with motivation? Like, are you always motivated 100%?
No, not at all. And it's exactly what you said there. There are so many theories of motivation, and like one of them states that it's a combination of what you value, your values, both internal and external, and your expectancy. So, do you think you're able to achieve that? It's also a function of the expected delay in achieving that. So, if I tell you that in 6 months you can be competitive on stage, you're probably going to be hugely motivated. But if I say it's probably going to take 10 years before you're even close to good enough to be competitive, then that can affect your motivation as well. And also managing your emotions. So some of the best are more process oriented. They love doing the sport. They love lifting for the sake of the sport or the lifting. Whereas others may be externally motivated. They need the validation, they need the cheering, they need, the constant bombardment of rewards to function. And I do believe that being intrinsically motivated for the sake of being doing whatever you're doing is very important, and that requires you to manage your distractions and your impulsivity. Some are just program hopping so much because they fear missing out, constantly changing stuff. Whereas those who can just, go to the gym, do the work, and track and monitor and adjust from more of a rational, logical, objective perspective tend to do better over time. They just stack wins, 1% better, building habits out of it instead of chasing new shiny objects all the time. So I believe those are, it needs to be something meaningful to you. It needs to be achievable for you, and something that's realistic and within a certain time frame, and having good habits in place that will ensure that you don't even need to rely on discipline or motivation all the time. It's more, maybe an obsession, maybe, something that's a natural part of who you are. It's your identity to, lift weights and be healthy.
Do you feel the same about working out today as compared to before, like when you were 30s?
Um, no. I mean, just like you, in my teens and 20s, working out was about looking good naked and being attractive and getting validation from others. And then slowly it transitioned into just enjoying the feeling of it, enjoying the process, seeing the progress, understanding the physiology. And now it's more of, I want to live a long and healthy life. I'm a father. I have a son and a family I love. I want to be here as long as possible. So now it's more a mix of cardiovascular conditioning and lifting in the gym. And I'm 50. I'm not going to be younger, so I need to be aware of my joints and connective tissue health as well. But I do try to go to the gym at least 3 times per week, sometimes 4 to 5. I'm more of an intuitive trainer these days. I do have like an overarching structure of my program, but I'm always mindful of my recovery. Like just a few days ago, I went to the gym and I did one set of warm up, and I just felt this isn't going. It's not a good idea to be here, and I just went home. I could not do that 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I guess I'm older and wiser these days, and my motivation now is different. It's still a strong motivation, but it's a different motivation than it used to be. So I would say it's more focused on sustainability and the long-term process, rather than chasing whatever goal or shiny object is presented.
Are you a competitive person in nature? Meaning, like, did you play competition and you feel the pressure of competing and that you have to, you know, I'll give you an example. For me, for example, tennis helped me a lot to understand what life is. I played tennis when I was young, and when I started competing, I started feeling stressed sometimes. I play well during the practice, but then during the match, I start shaking, I forget my technique, the balls go out, I miss easy shots. I look at my dad watching me, you know, I tell him what's happening. He said, "Okay, focus, focus." I didn't understand. It's like nobody else is going to hold my hand and tell me, "Hey, this is what you need to do. Focus on the basics. Focus on, the the technique." So I started learning that slowly. Uh, I started to handle stress, and then I started to cut my emotion and just focus on playing the game. And that's when I started seeing the success and, improve. And even if I lose, I don't have regrets. I don't get sad because I know I tried my best and I learned, you know. So to me, tennis, playing a competitive sport, is very important to build personality because those thought patterns now I'm using in different things. Even though I learned them in tennis, but I use them to fight in life for different things. So did you have a similar experience that you're using today like that?
Not myself. I was never competitive at all, simply because I wasn't any good. I didn't get really involved in team sports either, so um, I've been more competitive on behalf of my clients than I was ever on behalf of
It's good
myself.
competition.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's but what you're describing is what we call a growth mindset. You can show up, be well prepared. You're done your training. You've done what you can do with what you can control, and that's all you can do. So that's sort of a detachment from the outcome. because the outcome can be dependent on the judge, the weather, the wind, if you're playing outside. You can be unlucky sometimes, and sometimes your opponent is just better than you that day. But as long as you know that you've done what you can, you should still be happy with yourself. You should be satisfied with whatever result or lack of medal or prize you're winning. And that's the healthiest way to approach any sport. I think growing up and being told that everyone can be a winner is very damaging to psychology long term, because it makes you sort of believe that there's something wrong with you if you're not winning, instead of understanding that there's so many factors involved outside of your control. And even talent and even the best training sometimes can't win over someone with more talent than you and mediocre training. So the world is unfair, and doing sport for the love of the game instead of for winning is probably healthier, even though some of the winners probably need to focus on winning to be sufficiently obsessed about it. The downside of that is obviously that you can push yourself too hard and become injured or have a very short career. Many of the best athletes in the world retire before they're 30. So that kind of tells a story, I think.
It's fascinating to have you and talk to you about these things. I really enjoyed this conversation. By the way, do you like history?
History, yeah, I do. It's one of my interests and not my main. I more in the direction of philosophy, I would say.
The reason I told you this because we are having a trip or a tour Turkey this summer, and I'm bringing my community together to meet there and have conversation, meet face to face, because they are mostly from different countries, and it's an opportunity to meet, eat together, discover things together. It would be great if we have you there with us and your community, because I think the kind of conversation that can happen from events like this is priceless. And I'm not someone who's a big believer in video calls and text messaging, and I don't feel like the connection like that.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to live more in experiences, real life experiences. So that would be great. I'll send you more details. That would be great if maybe you join us there. I also have many people from Norway who joined one of the programs. I don't know why Norway, but we have many people who joined in Norway. Where can people find you and learn more about Myo-Reps in your community?
Myo-Reps.com is the website for the book and the programs. When you purchase the book, you get a link to join my what's called a Peaceful Peak Performance School community, where I spend a lot of time these days trying to build that. Other than that, my homepage, borgefagerli.com, and I'm mostly active on Instagram, I would say. That's where I post the most content. I am intending to do more on my YouTube channel as well. I only have like a few podcast interviews there, but I'm definitely going to be doing more long-form content eventually.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation too. If there is a question that I didn't cover, feel free to ask it in the comment section. Thank you very much, Børge, and I wish you all the best for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Mo. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I wish you the same.